Well, I suppose we all knew this was going to happen eventually. I was going to have to talk on this topic, and this is more off the cuff than my scripted other kind of works. And this one also wasn't in my plans for doing videos. Obviously, I can't predict the fucking future, so I didn't know this was going to happen. But we're going to be talking about George Floyd and the riots and the looting and protests and all that. Because let me be clear right off the bat. There is a clear distinction between somebody protesting and somebody rioting and somebody protesting and somebody looting. There are clean cut lines in between those two things. Now, the concept of police brutality has seemed to be completely and totally forgotten about in this entire situation. Is instead turned into, as it usually does, an issue of a couple of dichotomies. The first of which being race, although the officer that killed him, yes, he was white. It's an officer of the fucking law. The issue is with the fact that he was an officer of the law, not the fact that he was white. But there could be an underlying issue of racism there. You never know. Or it could just be simply that he was looking to take his anger and aggression out on somebody, and George Floyd just happened to be the guy that came across him at that particular moment in time. Another thing is the dichotomy of you have people that believe that either you have to be all for it or all against it, and many people, actually, and others included, have expressed their, way of thinking that you don't have to be either all for or all against it. Very clear cut lines for a traditionally not so grayscale topic, or not so black and white topic, rather, I should say. No pun intended, by the way. And you have people that seem to think that if you are against the looting, that means you are against people protesting the police brutality. No, I have no issue whatsoever, and even agree with people on some of these things when it comes to the police brutality. There is an issue with law enforcement in the United States thinking that they are above the law and acting with impunity. Now, this extends beyond the inner city. Now, you hear about the inner city the most because, well, A, obviously there's more cops. B, there's more crime. And C, it gets a lot more airtime. Now, keep in mind, the mainstream media does run what we would be considered a business, and they survive more or less on ad revenue and donations, et cetera, et cetera. But if the story about some college kid getting his ass kicked by a cop in a college town isn't going to accrue the same amount of views as something like this George Floyd case would, especially considering the amount of attention and media coverage around it already. It was a hot topic when it even first started, like the news about it first broke. It was a very hot topic. Now it's continuing, A, and B. Now that it has continued, the subject would not have maintained the same amount of momentum if it was a smaller, more isolated situation. The fact that the officers, in respect to what they did, they were caught on camera, that adds a lot of credence to it as well. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have any video evidence of it, and I'm going off on a tangent here, and if you don't have video evidence of it, it's essentially your word versus the police officer. And I really hate to say this, but most people aren't going to believe you. They're going to believe the police officer over you. Now, that might not be seen that way in court, but at the end of the day, your average Joe walking down the street is going to believe the cop before they believe you. Why? Because being an officer of the law carries with it a certain amount of belief in the average Joe's mind that you work within the law, you enforce the law, therefore what you do is the law. When in all actuality, that's not at all the case. And most officers act outside of the law and enforce unconstitutional laws, despite the fact that they're supposedly to protect the Constitution, even though they violate it on a regular basis. But that aside, George Floyd has more or less gotten forgotten through all of this. It has become a political tool by certain people, usually liberals, to push a certain narrative, namely that Trump is bad. Although the thing that I don't understand about that is that This is something that should be taken care of on a local level, whether it be the mayor, the governor, etc. You know, a more local authority should be dealing with this. It's not something you'd be expecting the executive branch to deal with, considering that this falls well outside of the executive branch's purposes, given the executive branch's fundamental existence as prescribed by the Constitution. And you have all these people that are jumping through their fucking assholes trying to get Trump to do something, anything. So let me get this straight. This guy is literally Hitler. He's a fascist. He's an authoritarian, which I can agree with under certain circumstances on that last one. But given those three things the left constantly calls him, you want the guy to actually misuse his power on a regular basis. Now, this is not something that's specific to George Floyd either. It just happens to be a particular topic that I'm talking about right now. So all three of those things, and you want him to become essentially all three of those things, I might add. Just because, you see, and that's another tangent. People always expect politicians to do something. The best politicians are the ones that don't do anything. They don't write laws. They don't make a situation worse by injecting themselves into it. Just look at Andrew Cuomo, if you don't believe me. That's just a certain relatively recent example of that kind of shit happening. But, and bear with me on this one, looking to Trump to magically wave a wand and fix this issue is not going to solve anything, and B, it's not going to happen. Because at the end of the day, let's say he does write a law. Okay, let's say he does write a law. You think the way law enforcement works, they're not. The law can be written and can be put on the books. They're a brotherhood. They're a fucking cult. They'll do whatever they can within their power to protect their own. Not to say that they're inherently evil for doing that. Yes, it's bullshit, and it's not the way that things should be handled, but it's the fact of the matter that that's the way that it is. And they want a perfect example. Look at all the officers standing around that one guy while he was on the other guy's while he was on George Floyd's neck, and just standing there. Some of them, matter of fact, were holding the guy down, going well beyond what would be considered standard policing procedure for a guy that was already incapacitated. So every time that this is going to happen, somebody's going to riot. These people, these idiots, are only looking for an excuse to go out and fucking steal shit. They were just happened to have been given the excuse by the death of a man by the hand of a fucking police officer. So this fucking happened, and these idiots, as soon as the rioting started and they got a chance, they went out and they stole from the Target, from fucking Walmart, from their local businesses, and essentially burnt their own fucking communities down to what? Send a message to the fucking cops? Yeah, they're standing around with their thumbs up their ass watching you guys do this because the mayor told them to fucking back off. And they're laughing. Because at the end of the day, when their shift's over, your neighborhood isn't the neighborhood they go back to. They go back to their own neighborhood that's probably more or less left alone and go about their fucking lives. Grinning the whole time, I would imagine. Now, that's not to say that the looting and the rioting, yes, that is completely and totally completely and totally unexcusable, and not only doesn't do nothing to help the original issue, it exacerbates it, and it devalues the point that some of these people that are actually protesting are trying to fucking make, because they're trying to get some shit across. Meanwhile, they have some morons stealing shit and burning their fucking communities to the ground. So now, a normal, sane person, because let's be honest here, politicians and the people that you see in the media with their beautiful sunshiny smiles, clean-cut suits, and nicely cut hair in the middle of a pandemic where we're not supposed to get haircuts, apparently, by the way. These people may be the ones that you see the most often, but they are far from representative of the fucking people that live in the United States. Most people don't care about what those people have to say. Most people don't care what the fucking color of your skin is. Most people just want to be left the fuck alone. Alright? But when you're trying to make a point about an issue, and police brutality is an issue, it is not an issue that affects just black people. It affects fucking everybody. But that's a topic for another time. But you have these people that are trying to make a fucking point, and you have other people that are merely opportunistic fucking vultures that are completely and totally ruining by putting their foot in the pool, they're completely and totally ruining the concept of any conversation with your average Joe, because the average Joe's not looking at the person with a sign. They're looking at what the media is showing them, which is the fucking people stealing and burning shit. So congratulations, rioters and looters. You completely destroyed the point of the original fucking protest. That's not to say that protests won't continue, because it probably will. But at the end of the day, it's going to go on for months and months and months. It's going to be forgotten, and the next thing is going to replace it. Which, by the way, I find very ironic that, not really ironic, more like sad and laughable, and a little depressing, that with the rioting and looting that's going on, all these people in large groups, yes, they're wearing masks because, let's be honest here, giving people cause to wear masks in public without any suspicion whatsoever was the best idea the government ever had. But these people are out in large groups. They're no way. They're not practicing social distancing. They're not washing their hands. They don't give a fuck about their health. They're out to get a free TV. Meanwhile, the same group of people, the mainstream media, that was fucking peacocking and howling like a hawk from the trees about coronavirus on a regular fucking basis, has suddenly switched their purview to rioters and looters. It's like coronavirus was cured by the death of George Floyd. That's to say, it's not cured, but if the media is to be believed, it just got swept under the rug faster than a dead body was hit by a fucking hitman. Well, I mean, the hitman was hired by Hillary Clinton, so, big dollars and all that, but that's besides the point. But it's like I said, depressing and sad, laughable and hilarious the way that people are led on by the media without any question of it whatsoever. They don't second guess the things that they are told, because they grew up in a system that tells you that if you question the people on the TV, you are crazy. You are a conspiracy theorist. Just because you happen to ask a few questions and those questions don't get answered and those questions are pertinent, nope, you're a conspiracy theorist. You believe what the box tells you, or you're not to be trusted. You're a tinfoil hat wearing fucking weirdo. But anyway, moving on. So, with the rioting and the looting going on, there are a few videos that have made the rounds, and there's images all over the place, but off the cuff, so I might dig them up and put them in the video if I can. I don't know, it depends. But one was out of Boston, I believe, and it was a video of two police officers taking bricks out of the back of a pickup and stacking them. And prior to the demonstration, the protests, rioting, and the looting. So they went there with the intent of giving these people the ability to exacerbate the issue. For what purpose? To what end? And these are the questions that should be asked. That shouldn't be swept under the rug with frivolity, simply because it's inconvenient to ask about, or it raises another question that might not want to hear. That it's not, well, it is the police, but it's not necessarily the police as individuals that want this to become worse. It's the people in power that want this to become worse. And yes, even the Antifa, I'm sure, wants this to become worse, because let's be honest here, if you're a communist of any stripe, actually, not even anarcho for that matter, if you're a communist for any stripe, you believe that the only way to actually bring about a socialist or communist system within the United States, or any country for that matter, is to burn it all to the ground and rebuild from the fucking ashes. That's not necessarily an uncommon trait of communists. But that aside, the reason why the Antifa would want to do it is clear cut and is rather obvious as to why they would want to do it. Now, the people that I really want to know as to why they want to instigate and make it worse are the police officers that are actually carrying out the actions, because you can't hide behind, I was just doing what I was told, or I was just following orders. Yeah, at some point you have to be like, no, I'm not going to do that. All right, you have to have some semblance of fucking principles. Be a goddamn human being, not a fucking sheep. But these people, why do they want to instigate violence? Well, I have a theory. Bear with me and put your tinfoil hats on for this one, although it's technically aluminum foil at this point. But the reason why they want to instigate and make this worse is so that they can pass more legislation and justify more laws. Like something similar to what happened after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, which, by the way, we still have. Fucking 19 years later. Patriot Act is still a goddamn thing. Now, with that said, it's clear cut, maybe clear cut and obvious in that sense, but they would not, A, they're never going to admit it. B, they're going to bury as much as they can of evidence that they did. And C, even if we could prove it, would people actually listen? Anyway, I think that just about does it for this video. I've ranted long enough. Anyway, I'm hoping to have a couple more videos done, but this one's going to be released first because this is more pertinent, I believe, than the other two. One's about Joe Biden's fuck up, and the other one's about how politicians think and work and act. Although, to be fair, that second one's probably going to be out next because it actually does lay some credence to what I talked about here. So, with that said, hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.